Hello, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a video about how to make the most of what you have. If you have an older car that's been sitting around for a while and kind of neglected, not a bad car necessarily, but it just needs a little love and you're ready to let go of it, this is going to be about what things you should focus on and where to focus your efforts and how to best present it to the world. So behind me is a 1987 Alfa Romeo Spider. It's owned by a family friend who's actually the original owner who bought it brand new. So he reached out to see if I could help him sell it. So I'm going to be going through the process of cleaning it and marketing it for sale. So let's go through some key points and get started. My strategy for doing this kind of thing can be broken up into 4 main points. First of all, we want to obviously enhance all the good points of the car as best we can to really let those shine through. Secondly, we want to reduce or eliminate as many of the negative aspects as we can. Third, we want to still be upfront and honest in the ad about any issues and the condition of the car. But fourth, we want to sell the romance, is how I put it, and that'll make more sense when we get towards the end when I start photographing it and marketing it. But why would someone want this car? Make it romantic. But anyways, let's do a quick walk around. I'll just show you some of the issues that stand out to me and what we're going to focus our attention on. So all in all, this car is really in pretty good shape. What you want to do is put yourself in the mindset of a buyer and try to look at whatever sticks out to you like a sore thumb. And for me, the first thing that I notice when I walk up to this is this crusty mirror. And I feel like when you see rust like that here, you start to assume that the rest of the car might be rusty. Luckily in this case it isn't. I've looked over it, I've looked underneath, and it's actually very solid, so that's good. But things like that are pretty easy to fix, but just make your impression of the car that much better. It's all about that first impression. The other side is not as bad. Go over here. It's starting though, it's a bit corroded. Aside from that, it just needs a good detailing and polishing. There's old wax in the emblems. The wheels are really dirty. Cool wheels though, and they're in good condition. But just try to look around for any issues. The interior is actually in good shape. It's leather, no rips. This door's pretty sticky. But this headrest doesn't match, and that is kind of the definition of a sore thumb right there. Apparently the original one got stolen for some reason, so this is the only one you could find, so I really want to find a matching one if I can. Aside from that, again, just cleaning. It's really dirty in here, lots of dog hair. You know, it was just a fun weekend car for him, which is great, but of course we want to present it the best we can. Only has 63,000 miles, so that's one of the positive aspects that we can lean on. Positive aspects are not only making it as clean and shiny as possible, which yes is very important, but it's also about the good information that comes with it. So I really want to lean on the fact that it's a one owner car with 63,000 original miles. People love that stuff. When it comes to reducing negatives, you obviously want to replace any worn out or damaged parts to the best of your ability. And you want to make sure it's mechanically in good running order and safe. People are going to test drive it. You want that to be a good experience. This car has a bit of an issue in first gear when you take off. It lurches really bad, no matter how smooth you are coming off the clutch. So it could be a rubber mount or something. We'll have to look into that. So let's take a look under the hood. And yeah, it just looks like an old engine. It's very oily. There's oil pooled up in the spark plug well there. There's a bit of soot on the hood. It should clean up. But it's cool, we have some original decals and whatnot, all in good shape. So we want to make sure to preserve those. For me, when I'm talking about things that stick out like a sore thumb, this airbox really sticks out to me. It's just really crusty, and that would be an easy thing to take out and, you know, sand down and scuff and clean and give it a fresh coat of satin black. That alone I think will make a big difference. This radiator, I think it'll clean up. We have an original paint marking there, which, you know, you want to try to preserve things like that if you can. It just speaks to the originality of the car. In general, just needs good cleaning under here. You'd be surprised what a big difference a clean engine bay can make. And again, your first impression, making it seem like it's a really well-maintained car, which it is. It just doesn't look like it right now. So the first thing I did was peel off a bumper sticker that was back here. I suggest taking any personalized items off before selling, just because the next person probably isn't going to like it, and it doesn't necessarily help the car look original unless the stickers are kind of from the same vintage as the car. Sometimes that can be cool. There is one big elephant in the room. Yeah. That is gonna be a problem. And if we leave that alone, it's really gonna turn people off, because who wants to buy a convertible with a tattered top? But sometimes you have to weigh whether these repairs are actually worth it and whether you're gonna get that money back in the sale price. Because repairs can obviously get really expensive, and if your car's not worth very much, it might not be worth it. So it's a bit of a juggling act, and you have to do some calculations to figure out what to do and what to leave to the next person. Maybe you can figure out what it's worth as is versus what it could be worth once it's all cleaned up and improved. And what I like to do is go on eBay and look up similar cars and click the checkbox for sold listings, because that way you're seeing what prices cars actually sold for and not just what people are asking, because you don't know if they're actually going to get as much as they're asking, like on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or wherever. I also like looking at Bring a Trailer. It's kind of the high watermark, best case scenario for classic and special interest cars. But cars are really well presented on there, and that's sort of what we're trying to do, and possibly get a premium for that presentation. So that's pretty much the overview and the plan. My main role in this is going to be the elbow grease, the cleaning, the detailing, and then taking nice pictures of it and marketing it online, which is kind of what I'm good at. It's always good to know when to defer certain things to other experts, like a mechanic and a upholstery shop, for example. But elbow grease is free, and there's a lot you can do yourself, so we're gonna dive into it.
3 days later.
The sun is shining and it's engine cleaning day. This is probably going to be the least fun part of this, but my whole strategy on the cleaning operation is to start from the inside out and do the grungiest work first. And that way, if I get any mess on the outside, it doesn't really matter, because the outside will be the last thing. So I got started on the inside of the hood already yesterday just to try it out. All I used was some dish soap, and it looks way better. But the rest, as you can tell in the bright sunshine, pretty grungy. Oh, I also tried a little spot there, and it actually helped quite a bit. But my first order of business is going to be to go ahead and take out this airbox and intake hose, mainly to get it out of the way, but I'm also planning on painting that airbox anyway, so that'll give us more access to the valve cover. But my strategy here for the engine is I like to avoid using really heavy degreasers, because sometimes they can damage things that you don't want to damage. So what I've got here is my array of stuff that I'm probably going to use. This is a little pump sprayer full of warm water and a pretty good concentration of Dawn dish soap. Dawn's a great degreaser. I also like this Zip all-purpose degreaser. It's pretty strong but not overly powerful and doesn't seem to hurt anything. Big array of brushes. This might not even be enough of an array, but the metal ones are only going to be for things like rusty clamps or the aluminum that's kind of corroded. Some gloves, of course, rags. And then back here, I don't even know if I'm going to use it, but it's my little pressure washer. It's pretty small, and a little shorty handle. And my thinking on this is, if there's any crevices that I just want to blast gunk out of, I can use a pretty wide tip on that. But you want to be careful not to use too much pressure or too much water in an engine bay, and be really careful around any electrical connectors or anywhere where water shouldn't be. Just be very careful. So yeah, let's get going. You might want to take note of things like this before you clean everything. See this big dark spot around this connection? That's something I'll want to inspect. It might be cracked or broken there, so I might be able to repair it with epoxy, but it could be affecting performance a bit. But things like this little rusty metal cap over here, we can use these little wire brushes. To at least try to improve upon it. Things like this radiator cap, I kind of want to start gentle because I can see it had a kind of gold CAD plating on it, so if you can try to avoid removing the plating but knock off the corrosion. Can also follow up with some fine steel wool. And this little clamp right here. Things like that. Pay attention to the details. Okay, so like I said, first step, I'm taking out the airbox. Even if I wasn't repainting it, I think I would still do this just to get it out of the way. It'll give me a lot more access. Next up, you want to plug up all the holes and hoses and of course the throttle body. We don't really want to get it wet inside there. Now I'm just giving everything a good soak with my soapy water. It'll help pull away the grime. Now I'm just trying to wipe down any areas I can get to by hand with a rag. Now another soak and trying to brush away the grime from the valve cover. Trying to get in all those little nooks and crannies with various brushes and rags. Still trying to keep it wet with soapy water. And now I got out the pressure washer and found that it worked really well to get things out of the crevices. And I was using a pretty wide tip because I didn't want to use too much pressure. Now I did break out some engine degreaser. The soapy water just wasn't tough enough to get the worst grime off the engine block, so the degreaser really helped. And going another pass with pressure washer, more soap, more rinsing. Now trying to just dry everything out. I used a little eyedropper thing to get the water out of the spark plug holes. Phew, that was fun. I think it turned out pretty well though, at least so far. Sorry for the half and half lighting. The thing that was tricky is the way this valve cover is designed. I got a lot of water and stuff in the spark plug wells, so did my best to dry it out, but I have it in the sun here and I'll just leave it for a while and won't even try to start it for a while till it's totally dry. But I had pretty good luck with the Dawn dish soap. It worked well on the painted surfaces and I was able to loosen stuff up, and I did use the pressure washer a little more than I thought I would, but it was working so well to just rinse away the grime, and I tried to avoid electrical stuff. But yeah, it's looking a lot better. I also noticed that the throttle body's pretty dirty, so I'm gonna have to clean that while I'm at it. Probably help. I don't know how well you can see in here. That's a lot better than it was. It's kind of interesting looking at this airbox because it's nice and clean on the inside. You can tell it's satin black. But yeah, outside's pretty ugly. The ideal thing would be to sandblast it and just repaint it, but I don't have a blaster here. It's good to know people. I might have to network a little bit and see if I can find someone who will let me use their blaster. While I'm at it, I'm curious to try this wheel and tire cleaner I got. I haven't used this stuff before, but supposedly you just spray it on, let it foam, and then rinse it off with a strong spray of water. So I have the little pressure washer out, so let's see how well this does. Looks like it's working. It's turning brown and ugly. Okay, I'll let that soak for a bit and rinse it off. Wow, I'm actually pretty impressed. That looks way better. There's only a tiny bit of gunk left. Wow, right on. Well, I'm about over it for the day, but it was nice to end with an easy, instant gratification thing like cleaning the wheels. That was just kind of a first pass and they look way better. These are cool wheels. Anyways. Alright, it's been a couple days since the first phase of the engine cleaning. Now that I've recovered a bit, I'm going to go into a second phase and try to get a little more detail oriented to finish it up. Again, I'm not going for total perfection here, but just trying to get the obvious grime that sticks out. So what I'm going to try to do with the valve cover is, it's cast aluminum and it's clean, but it looks kind of splotchy and a little bit corroded in places. So I think to get a more uniform finish on the aluminum, I might give it a light scuff with Scotch-Brite and some fine steel wool. Gonna be looking out for any little corrosion on clamps and whatnot and just try to brush away some of it. And then you can use some penetrating oil like WD-40 will help prolong the life of it and keep it from getting rusty, and it'll look a little better. Any of the painted surfaces that are red, I'll just make sure they're clean and might go over them with a little bit of easy spray wax. It kind of helps the color stand out. And on the rubber hoses and such, I want to go over them with like a rubber protectant stuff, which will help them, look better and also prolong their life a bit. And just try to get anything I missed. There's some grunge and nooks and crannies in here. So just getting a little bit more detail oriented. And I did use a little bit of engine degreaser the first time around and it got a lot of the bad stuff, but there's still a little bit of ugly deep down. You can see on the transmission and the side of the engine. I don't know if I'm really going to try to get all of it, but yeah, things like this fan shroud that look kind of chalky should improve if I go over it with protectant. But yeah, just trying to go second pass just to kind of finish it off. So time lapse number 2, let's go. Okay, so I started off with the scuff pad, just going over all the areas on the aluminum valve cover that I could reach. And then I went to town with some brass bristle brushes and some of the cracks and edges that I couldn't really get to with the scuff pad. Then finally, some fine steel wool kind of smooths everything out and gives it a shine. Started to look pretty good. Next, I took out the spark plug wires and went to town with some brake cleaner and brushes and rags and a little screwdriver to sort of scrape out the little remaining crud in the head that I missed the first time around. Worked out pretty nicely. Then I grabbed my engine degreaser again and tried to do another pass on the side of the engine block and the back where the transmission is. And there was still a fair bit of crud, so I was just trying to get more of it. While that soaked in, I went over the painted surfaces again just to make sure they were clean. And vacuumed out some of the crud from the head. Still trying to wipe away the grime on the block. Now I'm brushing off some corrosion on the spark plug wires. They looked a little bit unhappy. Now I'm just trying to get in some of those nooks and crannies that I missed the first time. Next up, I'm wiping down all the rubber hoses and plastics with protectant. Makes them look a lot nicer. And finally, reassembling the air duct. Okay, I think I've done about as much engine cleaning as I can handle, but it's looking good. Got some more of the crud out of the nooks and crannies and treated some of the hoses and plastics so they're looking better. But you can still see, the old cloth covered hoses and a little bit crusty clamps. It would be nice to replace all the clamps. But all in all, it just looks like an honest, 1987 engine. It's just not all covered in grime. So again, it makes a good first impression when you open up the hood. Let's go look at the other side. You know, nothing fancy, but pretty clean and tidy. Hey, I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the value of networking, whether it's in your own local area, car people that you know in your community, or if it's joining online groups. There's a lot of value to be found there, not just in advice and information about the car you're working on, but also parts you're looking for or any other resources that can help. So in my case, I reached out to a couple people in town who I thought might have a media blasting cabinet that I could use, and I found someone. So I'm getting these Airbox pieces ready. I got the airflow meter taken off and the little rubber grommets. This plastic tube I'm gonna have to cover up in duct tape because I think it's permanently attached to the box. But that's awesome, I'll be able to clean this up, and that's really gonna transform the engine bay. But hey, check this out. I also joined a Alfa Romeo Spider Facebook group and was asking around a bit. I posted some pictures of my rusty mirrors, and somebody chimed in and said, hey, I've got some extra red Spider mirrors like that I'm not using. You can have them if you just pay the shipping. What? So, no joke, look what just showed up today. These are so much better than what's on the car now, and it's gonna save me a lot of work trying to refinish those crusty ones. So shout out to Joe, thank you so much for these mirrors. So don't be afraid to ask for help and use your resources and reach out to different communities, especially those that are experts in the car you're working on. But car people are awesome, and you might be surprised how much they're willing to help you out. So big thanks to Joe for those mirrors, and thanks to Brandon for letting me borrow his media blaster. All right, it ended up taking a couple hours to sandblast these two, but check them out. Nice clean metal, ready to paint. If this seems like a lot of extra effort for an air filter box, it kind of is, but this stuck out like a sore thumb to me, and it's gonna look so much better when this is all done. So I gave them a wipe down with some wax and grease remover and a clean rag, and I'm ready to paint. And I have them elevated so I can get under the edges. But yeah, just using some satin black engine paint that I had left over. Should look good.
"11 minutes later."
Alright, the airbox is back in, and I think I can safely say there's no more sore thumbs in this engine bay. Check it out. It turned out really nice. And the whole engine as a whole now looks pretty clean. Definitely not perfect, but for a 34-year-old engine bay, I think it shows itself very nicely. I'm glad to be done with the engine cleaning process, but coming up next time on Andrew Does Car Stuff, convertible top's getting replaced. Very excited to see how that's going to come out. And after that, I'm going to start sprucing up the interior, so should be fun. Stay tuned.